need to continue to ask questions, not only of others, but of ourselves.
So are you ready to begin?
Sure.
Great. So for the people that don't know you, I have access to your bio, which will also be posted on Facebook, Twitter, website, if you're okay with that. But can you tell our viewing audience a little bit more about you?
Sure. I am currently on faculty at Wheelock College, a small college in Boston, primarily in early childhood education and in theater. We have a equity theater, the Wheelock Family Theater, associated with the college, and I work with them. That's where I do some of my TO work, is through the theater. My background is in early childhood education. I am not somebody who did theater my whole life. After college, that I got involved in street clowning. And I studied with a guy in New York and did street clowning and had a clown troupe in Boston and Cambridge, Massachusetts, called the Clown Jewels. Probably the best name ever.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that name. And through that work, I was working as a child and family therapist at the time in the child abuse program, and I did that for about 10 years and quite seriously burned out and decided to leave human services and education and joined a business called the Actors Institute, which did workshops on creativity and self-expression. And I continued clowning and then sort of learned the body of work that was about creativity and self-expression with a theatrical focus. And I did that and didn't think I was going to go back to education or human services. But somewhere along the line, somebody from a small college in Cambridge, not Wheelock, another one, asked me to do a course in drama for teachers. And I went and did it and realized that I missed working with teachers and that I identified as a teacher. The first time in my life I was not working with young kids was when I left my work and went to the Actors Institute. So I continued teaching part-time, and this was Cambridge College in Cambridge, Mass., and they kept letting me do more and more. And as I kept doing that, my business partner in the Actors Institute wanted to move to New York so he could do art. And I didn't really want to continue the business by myself. Closed that business and was doing part-time college teaching and decided that I really wanted to do teacher education and therefore I had to get a doctorate. So I did that. And I have now, this is making this long story short, I've now been at Wheelock for 16 years.
Wow.
And it's kind of the ideal place for me because it's a progressive, very small college and allows me to do a lot of combination of theater and education work. The other area that I'm primarily interested in, I created a course at Wheelock about creating welcoming environments for LGBTQ families. If I have an area of real activism, I think it's that area. I identify as a straight ally, and I do a lot of work in that area. Personally, I am single. I live in Boston. I think that's it.
So can I dig in a little bit about your place of personal activism? So I want to know two specific things, like where did you encounter the PTO world of work, Boal Frere, and how did you begin to understand what your specialty was going to become?
Okay, those are kind of
two different.
For me.
Okay, good.
But I think one thing, I'm now teaching a course in education and theater for social justice, and where I'm teaching Boal and Frere and other things. And it's striking as I prepare that work that I absolutely never learned about Paulo Freire in any school program. I read Pedagogy of the Oppressed on my own at some point, and as many people say, it began to change my life. It was because of that I decided to focus on Freire in my doctoral program, and I went to a very open alternative doctoral program where you design your own program entirely. There are no courses in the program. So I knew I was going to focus on Prairie. And I was interested in theater for social justice at the time. And I was literally searching the web. This was, I don't think Google existed yet. I was somehow searching the web for theater, and I came across Boal. And that's how I found out about it. So I began by reading independently for both of them. Yeah.
Wow.
And then I read lots of other things that Prairie wrote, and sort of continued from there. And at the same time that I found out about Boal, I found out about PTO. So I started reading, and then I started going to PTO conferences. In, I think, 2001 is when I started. And Boal was going. Every year he was leading workshops at the time. So that's how I learned. And I got completely turned on, and started trying to figure out how to integrate it all into the work I was already doing and what other work I might want to do. In terms of my area of activism, in one way, my area of activism has always been early childhood education. I mean, I decided on a career that was about that. So that's what I do. I consider my everyday work in that activism. But my sort of more, going to the street kind of activism has been started, I guess, focused on HIV and AIDS in the early years of AIDS. I was very much part of the gay male community at that time. That's who my friends were. So I got involved through that. And through the fact that everybody was dying. And there was through the Actors Institute where I was at the time, there was a workshop for people with HIV and AIDS that I led. So I've often thought about, so why is my activism in this area? And it has to do with identity. It has to do with my own feelings of being an outsider, and it has to do with the people who've been my community over the years. I've always identified as straight, so it's been an interesting path, and a lot of people ask me why, and why not other things. But that's just kind of where my life is.
No, it's actually, that is coming up in the interviews, that often the social justice area that someone wants to work on isn't necessarily the life that they are, not their world that they were raised in. So a white upper class female that I interviewed works on race. That's what she is quite interested in. So there's, of course, intersections. But that's really interesting.
Yeah, I also work in Guatemala. And it's interesting, one of the first questions that I get very often from Americans is, why are you working with teachers in Guatemala and poverty in Guatemala when we have just as bad situations here? And I used somebody else's answer. It was a young woman from my college who started the program in the Guatemala City dump that I work with. It's one of the programs I work with there. And her answer was, I went to Guatemala and I fell in love. For whatever reason, it grabs me. It's a personal decision. I don't know why I don't do that work in poor areas in the United States, other than what I got committed to. We all have to make choices. And I've now been going to Guatemala usually once a year, sometimes twice a year, for about 15 years. And I work with public school teachers, and now I work with a women's collective in one of the most dangerous gang-run areas of Guatemala City. And it's a group of women, about 70 women, who almost 30 years ago started a collective, and they have a couple of businesses, and they run a school.
Wow.
And I work with the teachers there. So it's the same kind of thing. Why that? I went to Guatemala and I got swept up. I love the people. I, have a family that is like my Guatemalan family there. we go where life brings us and where we get passionate.
I was watching an interview with Bell Hooks today, Gloria Steinem, and they were talking about like there has to be mutual hospitality. And so your story reminds me of like we both have to want to be there, for whatever reason. So that's interesting. Mutual hospitality.
Yeah. And for me, and particularly in my LGBTQ work, being a straight ally is, I think, really important. And there's a lot that I can do as a straight ally that people whose identities are at stake can't do.
Right.
And that's been of value over the years too.
Oh, can we go from there into the question about effective work? Like what work? So there's a question on this little sheet we developed. It's democratic process. So even the questions were developed as a board. So one of the questions was about what type of effective work have you developed or have you done lately? Or
that's a good question because I've done a fair amount of ineffective work.
We've talked about that in every interview, by the way. And if you would rather talk about what was ineffective, I find that fascinating too. So wherever you'd like that.
Well, I can talk about that really briefly. I mean, what I have not been able to do in Boston is get an ongoing TO group going. I have failed at that, I believe, 4 separate times. And then I gave up, then I stopped trying. I tried through several organizations. Well, I have had groups short term. I had one through the Multicultural AIDS Coalition for, I think we lasted about 2 years. But I've tried through the Boys and Girls Clubs to work with teens, and after we were all set up and running, they told me that they would not have any groups that they made kids commit to. Everything had to be drop-in. So that didn't work.
Right.
And then I was working through it. I think it was another Boys and Girls Club, and the person that I was working with, so there was when they changed staff, it didn't continue, and things like that. So that's where I've been ineffective. The other area that was disappointing for me maybe it's 7 or 8 years ago, I brought Julian Boal here to do a workshop. And we had about 60 people for a long weekend workshop that was wildly successful. And we had several meetings afterwards of people saying, what do we want to do to continue? And one of the things that was really interesting, and this is part of what I think is very true in Boston and in a lot of other areas, almost everybody who took that workshop and wanted to continue wanted to integrate TO into the other work that they were doing. And what they wanted was more workshops in TO. And at the time, there were, I think, 3 of us who had enough background to offer workshops. And none of us wanted to do that. We all wanted to do the work. And because of that, nothing happened in Boston. And now there's a couple of us who are thinking about maybe we'll do workshops again. I recently did a workshop on Cape Cod, which I think got some stuff started there. But I have not been able to create an ongoing TO group. So that's my most ineffective endeavor. My effective endeavor, and this is what I've ended up writing about, it's what the book that Toby Emmert and I edited, my part of it is about, I integrate theater of the oppressed into my teaching. And that has been really, really effective. There's a series of questions that I always ask myself, and what my chapter in our book is about is, am I really doing TO? Am I using it as a technique, which is not okay with me? Am I being true to the work? My answer to that is that I think I can be true to the work as long as it's political. If I'm just using it as a more effective way of doing role plays or something like that, then I don't feel like I'm doing TO. But if I keep the political focus and the social justice, obviously, focus and the focus on oppression, then I feel like I'm still honoring Boal and doing the work as it needs to be done. So for me, it's integrating it into my education courses, and because I'm at the college that I'm at, I have the freedom to create social justice focused courses. So my course it's called Creating Welcoming Environments for LGBTQ Families in Education and Human Services, the Theater for Social Justice, Theater and Education for Social Justice course, and I teach a course in clowning for socio-political change. Truly, luxurious privilege to be able to teach these classes. But that's how my work is effective, is integrating all kinds of aspects of TO into that work, and obviously trying to be as true to Frary as I can in that work as well.
So my next question is blooming out of that. There are a lot of people that come, at least through our Facebook page, that have, like, just like you, have begun to find the work. And I want to ask you a question, because you have, like, institutional knowledge, and you met Boal, which I did not have the privilege to do, although I've met Julian, and that's awesome. So for someone who's new, where would you suggest they begin?
That's an interesting question. I think everybody has to begin by reading, but I'm one of the people who's really adamant that you can't do this work until you have apprenticed and practiced. I'm very aware of the power of the work and of the danger of people wielding that who don't know what they're doing, or don't know, one, how to support people, and two, what to do with the stuff that comes up. So I think everybody should start by reading, but that's not enough. I met a guy in Guatemala who told me, oh, well, I practice forum theater. And I was all excited, and I started talking to him, and it turned out he had read Games for Actors and Non-Actors, and he was doing forum theater. And he said that he was doing forum theater, but there happened to be a woman who worked with him there, and she said, but it never works. We never get spec actors. And he was sort of reluctant to admit that.
No, it's just...
And then it turned out that, that's what happens when you try to do it just by reading. I mean, he had no idea how to be a joker. So I do think people have to find people to take workshops with, people to apprentice with. And we all have our opinions about who's good ones to do that with and who's to stay away from.
Right.
But I think you have to do it. And I think you have to do it for a long time. I don't think you can take a weekend workshop or a couple of week workshops and be ready to be a joker.
No.
I think you can integrate the techniques into something else, which many, many people are doing, and that's really what I'm doing now. But it takes a lot of skill and a lot of knowledge to really do the work.
I absolutely agree with you. And one of the things we want to do is, if you were to have a training coming up, and I know you lightly talked about it, one of the things that our membership, they ask about all the time, regionally, nationally, people look for joker trainings. So
yeah.
if you were to put that together, or have even thoughts about it, or could people contact you if they were in the Boston area or willing to go there about joker trainings? You think you might?
Sure, and that actually already happens to me. I get a fair number of emails. I think people from Googling TO or PTO and my name comes up. So that's fine. And that's actually why there's one other guy, Dev Lutra, in the Boston area now, who are thinking about doing workshops. It's mostly because we get asked a lot. Yeah.
I met Dev in a drama therapy workshop. But that's okay, good. Yeah, in Boston. So yeah, cool.
Cool. Yeah, Dev and I are good friends, and we the last work that we did together, there's a residential school for young people with brain injuries,
Oh.
And we did a series of drama workshops for them. I think he's still doing it. My schedule stopped working, but he's still doing it. That was really fascinating. We thought we were going to do some TO stuff with them, but they really didn't. Most of them didn't have the conceptual ability to do that.
And Deb is,
it was a very, very wide range of brain injury issues.
Deb is also a clown, correct? He's also,
yes, no.
Yeah.
No, he's an actor.
Oh, okay.
No, he does a lot of Shakespeare.
Oh, okay.
And he has the group called And Still We Rise.
Yes.
He has a theater group that's a performance group that's all ex-convicts and their families.
Wow. I
remember he
that.
Does great work with that. Yeah.
So as we begin to near the end of our time, because I know you've got a thing here in just a minute, is there anything you would like to share, like a message or a reflection or an idea for 2016? Because if, by the way, we're filming this at the end of 2015. So just to give you a little time stamp, if you see this in the future.
Well, I don't think I answered your question about what I get from PTO.
Yes, please.
What I get from PTO that I do not get from anything else I do is a connection with a very unique, very wonderful, very powerful group of people. I go to many professional conferences, and there's none that I enjoy the way I enjoy PTO. And there's none that are as volatile as PTO.
Mm-hmm.
And I just sort of adore the people that I meet at PTO, and the conversations that happen there are different than happen anywhere else. The activities that we do are different. For me, I live in two worlds. I live in the early childhood education world and kind of the theater for social justice world. And there's no other place where I meet people who have a foot in both of those worlds. There aren't many early childhood people, even at PTO, but at least there's education people and people. Everywhere else you go, they're kind of separate. It's one or the other. Now, I don't have colleagues in my teacher education program who are into theater, and certainly certainly not anybody who knows about TO. And I'm one of the only early childhood people I've ever met at PTO or any other TO-focused thing. And I don't do TO with young kids. That's another thing. I mean, TO is not an early childhood education thing. But, so for me, it's a chance to see, the only chance that I have to connect with people who combine the things that I combine. I would always wish for more than once a year so I love all these new ways of connecting with people. Mm-hmm.
I did want to ask you another question about, okay, so I'm a mom of a 6-year-old, and I was in higher ed, and I've thought about, like, when is TO age appropriate? What's your opinion on that?
I've thought about it a lot. I wouldn't do it with kids before middle school. 12, 13, that range.
Right.
My focus in early childhood is kids should be creating their own. Kids should be doing their own dramatic play when they're young, without adults involved, or with adults facilitating, or you provide the right props or that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. I'm a play advocate. Kids are not playing as much these days as they used to, and their play is getting is too scripted because they're often playing out what they've seen in TV and movies.
Yeah.
And there's a loss of creativity. So I'm kind of a big advocate of adults setting the stage for children's play and not being as directed as you are in TO, mm-hmm. but also that I really do trust kids to play out what they need to play out. So if we're talking more therapeutic or more looking at issues, it's not that I want to protect kids, which is one of the misunderstandings that a lot of people have about young kids. I just don't think they need it. They're not mechanized yet. You don't need to get demechanized when you're a kid. You need to get demechanized by the time you're 11 or 12.
Totally. That's actually, especially with your background, and psychotherapy, right? With that background, that's a really important. It's like, and if you're a joker and you haven't considered even that part of it, maybe it is time to like really, because TO intersects with therapeutic applications. I mean, there's so many applications of it. So there are lots of people like you writing smart things to help us jokers keep people, to understand what this work, how powerful it is, and how to keep the work and not something else.
Yeah, there's a new, I think a new thing happening in the wider community that's actually just came up at my college that's been happening in the TO community for years. And that is the conversation about safe spaces. It is now all over college campuses. Students are demanding that their classes be safe spaces. And there's a lot of misunderstanding among young people about what that means.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the ways I've been able to contribute to the conversation in my college is by talking about the conversation that's been going on at PTO for at least the 15 years I've been involved, which is, the argument about, one, is there such thing as a safe space? And two, is that desirable, and do we have a responsibility to create it? And it was at PTO in the early years where it was the most vociferous voices were usually the people of color saying it's ridiculous to talk about safety. There is no safe place. That's white privilege. And the conversation has gotten reversed in a lot of places, that students of color are demanding that their classrooms be safe. So I think from PTO in particular, there's been a history of that conversation, which is really, really important in this dialogue. Not sure how I got to that. But.
No, and it reminds me of a moment with our now current president, Lee, in a workshop that he was leading. He said, "This is not a safe space." And I just like, these moments happen at these conferences around these people. And I have thought about that forever. Well, 2 years since that moment happened. So I think it's a really valuable conversation and has broad reaching.
I do think we have, if we're leading something like that, we have a tremendous responsibility to create an environment in which people can take care of themselves.
Yes.
And the old cliche is it's a safe enough place to be able to take risks. But I do think we do have a responsibility. I had a very traumatic experience. My first experience ever with psychodrama was that in the 1970s, somebody in Cambridge, Mass. Was doing drop-in psychodrama.
Oh.
Which now, of course, I think is unethical. But I did a psychodrama first time in my life that he very quickly picked up that my mother was dying, and did a psychodrama around that. And I ended up hysterically sobbing on the floor, and he absolutely couldn't help me, the guy who was directing the psychodrama. And I didn't go back to any kind of theater work for 5 years after that. And that has formed in me a very strong opinion that whoever does this work has to be ready and able to give people whatever it is they need as a result, and also to help people get themselves back together if that happens. So I do think we have a responsibility, and we have to have the skills to help people with the emotions that come up, because deep emotions come up, and especially if you have the gall to work with people who've been through trauma. And I think there's way too many people doing that without the skills to do it. You gotta know what you're doing. You gotta be able to create an environment and hold people in the way that they need to be held, but that's not making a safe space.
I agree. But is there anything else moving into 2016? Any like final ideas or messages or anything you want to share with our PTO friends?
I think that's it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful
Thank you.
rest of
It's
your
been
day.
delightful.
Yes, you too. And I look forward to meeting you in person one day.
Yes, and I'm looking forward to seeing all these.
Yes, me too. Thank you so much for your time.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.